If the May Metro North Committee meeting could come to order, please. Our president, Kathy Rinaldi, is unable to be with us today, so she's represented by the Executive Vice President, Sue Doring. Welcome. Are there any public speakers?
Yes, Commissioner. We have 2 public speakers registered. We ask them to please adhere to the 2-minute limit and to speak on agenda items. The first speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Metro North Rail Commuter Council. I think Metro North should be commended on the great effort they did to restore service following the recent storms, especially on the east side of the Hudson River where the storms were severe. They did a great job and should be commended. But we also have to look west of Hudson, and we have to see what can be done to fix the problems there. New Jersey Transit has come up with a terrible policy of canceling trains on the Pascack Valley line anytime there's a problem. And what they've done, and Metro North has done, is accept that policy, because starting on June 3rd, Express Train 1618 and 1739 will be canceled from June 3rd through the end of the year into January, and that is totally unacceptable. The excuse given by New Jersey Transit is the fact is that they need to install positive train control equipment, and they have to meet the December 31st deadline. Actually, New Jersey Transit is way behind in installing PTC, and the Amtrak president has told New Jersey Transit, if you don't have PTC installed in your equipment, you're not going to be able to run your trains on the Northeast Corridor and into Penn Station, New York. New Jersey Transit has pressed the panic button on this one. The cancellation of Metro North Express trains on the Pascack Valley has angered many local officials. Our Congresswoman Nita Lowey has been very upset about this. Our County Executive Ed Day has been upset. You can read the notice that he put out. The main problem really is the shortage of control cars, and that is because both New Jersey Transit and Metro North have had some equipment available, but they didn't fix it up and make it available during this period. This is something that they should look into and see what can be done to fix up some of those cars so we don't have to cancel our Metro North Express trains. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
Been a very interesting week. 32 bishops in Chile tendered their resignation this week. $500 million was assigned to pay off sexual harassment in a college in Michigan. There was a royal wedding in England this weekend. Spectacularly different. Nothing like that has ever happened before. Yesterday, I was at my grandson's graduation in Trinity College in Hartford. Spectacularly different. Unbelievable what these young students are capable of. Speaking out, friendly. It's a new world out there. Congratulations, Andy, on your nomination as Social Security Administrator. And here at the MTA Metro North, we blow the horns at 125th Street because we can't stop. You have a red box in Roaring Brook, which is illegal, and nobody stops them. You're using married pair, and you're buying more married pair, which are out of date, and nobody stops them. In a corporate world, the board would be replaced. This committee is responsible for everything that's going wrong in Metro North. You hire and fire the president, and this committee. I'm sorry, Jim. You're supposed to listen to me. They hired you as a committee member. That's exactly what's wrong. It's more important for you to have a side conversation than to listen, and I was just describing that the people on this committee were not paying attention. You just proved my point extraordinarily.
Mr. Bowden, can you conclude your remarks? Thank you, sir.
Have you listened to what I said?
Thank you to our speakers. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second? Somebody? Thank you. All those in favor? Minutes are approved. Could we have the president's report, please?
Good morning. I want to provide the following updates to the committee since last month's joint meeting. In terms of service reliability, during the month of April, east of Hudson on-time performance improved 3.4% from March, and trains operated above goal at 94.7% across all 3 lines and service periods. May's performance is below goal primarily due to the impact of last Tuesday's major storm. I'd like to provide a report on the storm and our response. With the threat of high winds and rain during the evening rush, we preemptively placed crews equipped with chainsaws and bucket trucks on standby to respond once the storm passed through the area. The storm first hit the Upper Hudson Line hard, taking down multiple trees and requiring us to suspend service north of Croton Harmon at approximately 4:30 p.m. As the powerful storm traveled across our service territory, Harlem and New Haven line service was also impacted by numerous fallen trees and the loss of power between Chappaqua and Brewster. At approximately 5 p.m., service was suspended on all 3 lines, and trains were instructed to safely proceed to the nearest station. We briefly closed Grand Central Terminal for safety to prevent overcrowding conditions. Customers were only allowed to exit the terminal and were urged to avoid coming to Grand Central until service resumed. Excuse me. At approximately 6 p.m., the worst of the storm had passed. There was minimal impact on our New Haven line, so we were able to resume service at that time. We then resumed service on the Hudson line between Grand Central and Croton Harmon. Later in the evening, we were able to provide limited service to Peekskill. Shortly after resuming Hudson line service, we were able to resume service on the Harlem line between Grand Central and North White Plains, with limited service to Mount Kisco. However, beyond Mount Kisco, the line remained out of service due to multiple fallen trees and third rail damage. Later in the evening, we were able to begin a shuttle bus operation from Mount Kisco to Southeast. As crews continued to clear trees from our right-of-way and make repairs to the third rail, we developed a service plan for Wednesday morning. Late Tuesday night, customers were informed that we expected to operate regular train service on the New Haven line, regular service between Croton Harmon and Grand Central on the Hudson, and regular service between North White Plains and Grand Central on the Harlem line. Limited service was anticipated between Poughkeepsie and Croton Harmon on the Hudson, and limited service was anticipated between Southeast and North White Plains on the Harlem. Service would remain suspended between Wassaic and Southeast. The initial plan called for canceling 3 Upper Hudson trains and 10 Upper Harlem trains, and customers were told to expect delays and crowded conditions. Thanks to our crews working through the night clearing trees, we were able to extend regular service on the Hudson line to Poughkeepsie and therefore operated the 3 Upper Hudson trains. By midday Wednesday, crews had completed clearing the tracks between Wassaic and Southeast, making it possible to resume service to Wassaic before the evening rush. In sum, the severe spring storm wreaked havoc on our railroad, taking down roughly 170 trees along our tracks and bringing our service to a temporary standstill. But thanks to our colleagues' dedication, teamwork, and quick action, we were able to get our customers through this difficult situation and get them to their destinations safely. We carried out a plan to ensure that customers and employees arrived safely at their closest station while delivering updated information digitally and in person at outlying stations and at a crowded Grand Central terminal. Employees went out in the storm and worked through the night to clear the tracks of fallen trees and make repairs to damaged infrastructure so we could bring service back to as close to normal as possible the next morning. This kind of dedicated and skilled response to sudden and severe weather challenges makes us all proud to be part of such a great group of transportation professionals. On behalf of Kathy, I'd like to thank everyone for a job well done. West of Hudson service operated at 93.3% during April, with New Jersey Transit's engineer availability remaining poor, which resulted in 1.6% of trains being canceled. While train service performance has been within acceptable levels, our West of Hudson customers have been suffering through frequent cancellations as a result of NJT's systemic shortages of crews and equipment, and Metro-North understands our customers' level of frustration. Under new leadership, NJT is on the path toward resolving some of these issues, and an infusion of cash from the state of New Jersey should help things over the long run. However, this does not provide immediate relief for our West of Hudson customers, and we need to continue to focus on improving service delivery. NJT's announcement to temporarily reduce train service system-wide from June through December in order to free up equipment for positive train control modifications only makes the situation more difficult for our riders. It is important to note that the reductions affect 4 NJT lines and are not targeted at the Pascack Valley line. In total, 18 trains are affected, including 1 AM peak and 1 PM peak Pascack Valley line train. We will be meeting with NJT officials and are pursuing the following measures to mitigate the service impact on our customers. President Rinaldi has requested that NJT commit not to cancel the remaining express trains for the duration of the service reduction. She has also asked NJT to accelerate restoring the 2 canceled Pascack Valley trains well before the end of the year, even as they continue with the remainder of their PTC installations. Metro-North will cross-honor Pascack Valley line tickets for the duration of the service reductions on the Hudson and Harlem lines, Haverstraw, Ossining Ferry, as well as the Port Jervis line. We will also provide reimbursement to Rockland County for Pascack Valley line ticket holders who travel on the Tappan Zee Express buses during this period. Finally, we are exploring options to invest the funding that will be saved by not paying for the 2 express trains into transit incentives that will benefit Pascack Valley line customers, and will share the proposal with the committee at the appropriate time. Tied to NJT's stepped-up effort on PTC compliance, I want to point out there is a ratification on today's agenda for the purchase of software and hardware to be installed on our West of Hudson locomotive fleet, which NJT operates. On a happier note, I am pleased to report that the Connecticut legislature passed a budget on May 9th, which provides the funding necessary to avoid New Haven line fare increases or service reductions for travel to or from Connecticut stations. Work to replace the power poles and wire on the Upper Harlem line damaged during the March nor'easters is progressing, along with the removal of trees with the potential to impact our power lines. We expect to complete this repair work in early June. There's a ratification on today's agenda for additional funding needed to support the trimming and removal of trees along our right-of-way that have the potential to impact our power lines. Please note there will be future procurements to support this effort. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our customers for their patience while this work was underway on weekends when we operated a bus bridge between Southeast and Golden's Bridge stations. I'd also like to recognize the efforts of my colleagues who provided assistance and support during this emergency repair work. As always, Metro-North folks pulled together as a team, and I am proud to be part of such a dedicated team of transportation professionals. While we're on the subject of the Harlem line, we are aware of concerns about crowded conditions during off-peak hours. As we previously advised the committee, the extensive station rehabilitation project at White Plains Station and nearby track and structure improvements prompted a schedule change that began in mid-March. This work is taking place in two-track territory, which unfortunately limits our operational flexibility. With the new schedule on weekends and during off-peak hours, about half of the local trains on the inner Harlem line that would normally go between Grand Central Terminal and North White Plains now terminate at Crestwood. Onward stops are largely being replaced by adding stops at Crestwood, Scarsdale, and Hartsdale to off-peak express trains to and from Southeast. We have been monitoring ridership and making whatever adjustments that we can to address the situation. Kathy has asked our operations planning and transportation staff to see if they can identify additional strategies for mitigating the crowding, and Kathy will be reporting back on any recommendations at the June committee meeting. As you know, every quarter we report to the committee on Metro-North's extensive track and infrastructure improvements to enhance the safety and reliability of train service. As part of that work, we use a machine that lifts the track slightly into the correct position and tamps the ballast beneath the railroad ties to secure it in place. But over time, this process slightly raises the track's elevation, and this can cause problems for trains that travel under overhead bridges and overhead catenary wires due to a reduction in clearance. This is especially true on the New Haven main line, where our trains draw power from the overhead catenary, making maintaining the proper clearances from the top of trains to these electrified wires critical. In order to address these gradual track raises and restore the track to its proper level, we will begin an undercutting program on the two middle tracks of the New Haven line between New Rochelle and Rye during off-peak hours this month and lasting until the fall. An undercutting machine will be deployed to remove all of the ballast in and approximately 8 inches below the tracks being lowered. This operation requires extensive preparation before and restoration following the undercutter to ensure the integrity of train operations on adjacent tracks and to place the track back in service when complete. During undercutting, a train to catch the ballast and other debris that is being removed must occupy an adjacent track, requiring us to take 2 tracks out of service continuously during the project. We appreciate our customers' patience during any off-peak delays they may experience during this important track maintenance project, and we are informing customers about this initial work and will do the same for any subsequent phases. I'm happy to answer any questions.
First, I'd like to add my own kudos to Metro-North for getting back into service as rapidly as possible. I was amazed. There were so many trees to deal with, and you did it so efficiently, so thank you for that. Questions? I'll start with Randy and work my way up.
I want to also echo the sentiments of my Vice Chair, Warren Getz. Good job getting the service back. The commuters appreciate that, I'm sure. During the storm, I was watching the Channel 4 news from home, and reporters said that the cell service was kind of weak because of all the people that were in there. Is there something that could be done to have a better capacity? It's not my area of expertise, but that where people can, when they need to use the phone, that they can use the phone. He said there was a very poor cell service for that. Was there any delay in getting support from the power utilities when we had the trees and the other things down on the tracks?
We had a major outage on the north end of the Harlem line. NYSEG lost a transmission line, which knocked out 5 of our substations. They got 4 of them back within 3 or 4 hours, and in spite of the fact that they said the 5th wouldn't come back until the next day, they got that early on in the morning. So that was really the only outage. Globally, we had a bunch of local power outages that affected train stations and individual facilities that finally cleared up the following day.
And so the last thing I want to say is I'm not happy that those 2 express trains are being taken off. It seems like a simple thing. It's 1 crew, 4 cars, 1 engine. I'm sure they could, if they really looked hard, they could find it. They regularly, as I've written to the staff and to the management here, they regularly short our express trains by 1 car. So taking 1 car off any of the other lines shouldn't have that much of an effect. And the electeds are all opposed to this, and they've sent letters. And it's really, it's egregious what's happening to us. We have the fewest trains of any train line in the northern part of the state of New Jersey, and to lose one more train, it's beyond the pale. Thank you.
I think Veronica was next.
Thank you. I was one of the commuters stuck or hanging out for a few hours in Grand Central last Tuesday, and I want to add my thanks, but also to the staff, but also thank the chief and the police, because Grand Central was a hot mess, and you all did an excellent job of maintaining safety and order. And I think Metro North customers also were very understanding of the situation. Of course, many of them reside in these communities where they're often impacted by the effects of these storms. So they readily understood the challenges that were ahead. And within 2.5 hours, I was on a train home. So, but I wanted to add my thanks to the chief and your team.
Jamie.
I'd like to acknowledge the first time I've heard the word hot mess used in an MTA committee meeting. But also, I would also like to say, I mean, up in Dutchess, and I think I probably speak for my colleague from Putnam who can't be here today, people were saying the next day it was a miracle that the train was getting back and forth from Poughkeepsie. And I was laughingly saying it wasn't a miracle. It was crews and teams and people who were out all night, who never slept, who were working under tremendously difficult circumstances and dangerous circumstances. That tree removal is not without its own risk. And the state of affairs down in particular the Beacon area was catastrophic. And it really is, I was telling our county emergency operations center, that night, I don't see any way train service is running the next day. We couldn't even get the roads open in Dutchess. And you had the train service back up before we could open 9D, which is pretty remarkable. So thank you guys so much. It's noticed. It really brings to life for a lot of residents who ride the line in the northern part of the line, who might at times, when we talk about economics, dismiss the importance and necessity of Metro North Railroad, that in fact it is a significant part of the lifeblood of the economy of the northern part of the Metro North territory. And it's a big deal when it's down, and it's a big deal when we can get it back up despite tremendous adversity. So thank you. You know, one thing that came out of it for me that maybe we could talk about in the coming weeks and months is, you know, amongst municipalities, there are mutual aid agreements that are very beneficial. And I know I was in the middle of some conversations that were good, and Metro North and the MTA is very helpful, I think, to certainly speaking for Dutchess when appropriate, and Dutchess tries to be for Metro North when it can be, but it's less than a formal sort of mutual aid type of arrangement. And maybe there's some conversations we can have to look at that and see if there's a more formalized model. Although at that particular point in time, Dutchess didn't have a lot to offer, and it wanted to in terms of tree cutting because it was, you know, in its own bad predicament. But I think maybe there's something, it dawned to me, to be looked at there from a more formalized perspective. And I agreed, Chief, your team did an incredible job that could have really turned into a, you know, it probably was a dangerous circumstance. It stopped from, it's remarkable that there wasn't real, you know, any notable injury or worse under the circumstances, both in Grand Central and up the line. So thank you all, really appreciate it. One question for you on jumping topics, on the undercutting. How often is that undercutting required? When was the last time we had to do undercutting?
So the last major undercutting program we did was on the Hudson line back in the 90s to improve freight clearances. So it's similar to this. If you have no obstructions, really the only things that you have to worry about are clearance to side platforms so people don't have to step down to get off, or if you raise up over a bridge and the ballast starts to come down. So We have not undercut this in anybody's institutional memory on the lower New Haven.
And what will it reduce the height by, the undercutting, roughly?
The first pass will drop it down about 8 inches. The problem is you can't drop much more than that because then you affect the adjacent track, so you have to come down and then down. You have to step your way down. We could probably do it a total of maybe 16 inches, but then you get to the outside tracks. But once we get 8 to 10, we're in good shape.
And this undercutting machine is something we own, or it's something we lease to do this project?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestion, Jamie. I think it's a good one. And thanks to both you and Veronica for your own testimony as to what you saw and experienced. Andrew.
As fiduciaries here, we are often very critical of the operations, but I too would like to say, I know I happen to live in Bedford, and we were very lucky because none of the cells hit that area in northern Westchester, so really we got a pass on this one, but I have a lot of friends in Connecticut and Putnam and so forth, and I know how disastrous, and still is disastrous. A lot of people are out of power as we sit here, so you guys and men and women did a heck of a job here. And I mean, I saw Kathy on the television, you know, out there in Grand Central, you know, with the chief and everybody, and you know, everybody really pulled together, and I think that this is a time to really say to the whole staff, great job done. Thank you.
Mitch.
I also want to thank the entire staff for a job well done. Seeing it through the emails and everything, it was clear that a lot of work got done in a very quick time. So on behalf of the entire committee, we want to thank the Metro North staff and people for that. I have 2 other questions, however, and maybe we have discussed them before, and maybe they just perked my head when you're going through your report. With regard to our contract with New Jersey Transit, which is obviously an integral part of this discussion, what are their responsibilities in regard to how many trains they have to provide on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever time period we have with them basis?
I don't know that we have anybody with us who is really well versed with that. Do you want to give it a shot, John?
I'll give it a shot. The relationship with New Jersey Transit is similar to CDOT's relationship with us. We basically have a service agreement that, when it was actually agreed to, laid out a structure by which New Jersey Transit will provide service within the New York State portion of our territory. There is no guarantee on a number of trains. When there's typically a service disruption, there typically is no refund or reduction in fees. However, in a case like this, where the express train was scheduled to be canceled for basically a 6 to 8 month period, under those circumstances, there is a financial refund due to Metro North. Should New Jersey Transit disproportionately impact Metro North service as compared to theirs, I do believe the agreement has some provisions in there to prevent that. And as Sue said in her opening remarks with regards to this cancellation of the 2 express trains on the Pascack Valley, it wasn't a disproportionate amount of cancellations based on the overall New Jersey service territory. So when it comes down to it, in layman's terms, if they treat us fairly and reasonably as they do the remainder of their service territory, typically there is no cause for default. And I'd ask maybe Rich Gantz to add on to what I provided.
There are no specific penalties or liquidated damages for missing trains or short trains. They have an obligation to provide service in a reasonable and responsible manner. We meet them regularly to make sure that they're providing that. They have system-wide issues, I think, that are well known, which is, I think, at the heart of this.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be, but correct me if I'm wrong, there is a significant difference between our arrangement with New Jersey Transit and our arrangement with Connecticut Transportation. if my recollection is correct, in Connecticut, we provide the service. There are Metro North cars, there are Metro North employees, there are Metro North everything. In New Jersey, on our line, New Jersey Transit provides the service. They're their cars, their employees, or
No.
am I missing something?
It's more complex than that.
Okay, well, that's what I said, okay? Please.
It's New Jersey Transit provides the employees.
Right.
And therefore provides the service, because obviously we run over their service territory
Right.
to get into their terminals, but the equipment is ours.
So if the equipment is ours, why are they taking our equipment out of their service to provide our service? As I said, I may be missing something, but it just
Okay,
it doesn't
you
connect
go.
in my head.
I'll take another shot at this, Mitch.
No, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. I'm just trying to understand.
No,
This has
it's-
been an issue of great concern, and I'm just trying to understand the ramifications of this.
I think we should answer this question, but I'd like to point out to the staff that the agreements, both with CONDOT and New Jersey Transit, have always been a little foggy. And I do think that a briefing on the similarities and differences would be most helpful to the committee to understand, because we had recent questions about the Connecticut agreement, but they are very different agreements.
Well, that's my impression, that they are different agreements.
They all involve money.
Well, money is the simplest part at the moment. Randy's service is the most difficult part of the contract at the moment.
Just to set the record straight, Metro North owns 65 Comet 5 cars, which are used mostly on Port Jervis and Pascack Valley, well, they do migrate elsewhere, and 15 locomotives, some going back as old as 1966.
If I could try to simplify a very complicated topic. The general structure and premise of the two agreements is similar. However, the major difference are the roles are reversed. With the state of Connecticut pays Metro North to provide train service within their state. We provide the employees, and based on the fact that the New Haven line is partially in New York and partially in Connecticut, there's a 65-35% split in operating costs, plus there's a 65-35% split in mainline equipment. So the M8s are owned 65% by the state of Connecticut, 35% by the state of New York. The branch line service in Connecticut is 100% Connecticut. So Connecticut owns 100% of the locomotives and coaches for that branch line service, and they pay us to provide service to them. For our west of Hudson service, as Mr. Glucksman stated, we provide equipment. The equipment we provide is 65 Comet 5 coaches, 15 of which are cab cars, and 15 locomotives that over the last 10 years or 15 years have been overhauled twice. Metro North is responsible to provide 100% of the equipment for the Port Jervis line. And for the Pascack Valley line, it's operated under a pool agreement where we basically supply 4 coaches and 1 locomotive. And the Pascack Valley line is run primarily as New Jersey Transit service with carrying some New York State customers, where the Port Jervis line service is 100% Metro North provided and paid for service. So that's kind of a high-level explanation of the differences in roles. And in New Jersey Transit, again, we pay them to provide service for us. So over the years, if you look at back in, I have to bring up bad times, but 2013, 2014, when Metro North was unable to provide a good level of service to the New Haven line, the Connecticut State Legislature was asking the same questions we're asking of New Jersey Transit today. What can we do to get better service? And it's the same questions Metro North is now asking New Jersey Transit. What can we do to have them provide us better service as well? And not to defend their position, but they have gone through a number of years of significant challenges organizationally. And as Kathy said in her opening comments that Sue conveyed, Kevin O'Connor and Ed Baxa and other folks are now trying to come up with strategies through which to turn that agency around so that in the near future, not tomorrow, but hopefully within the next couple of months or next year, New Jersey Transit will be able to recover and provide the level of service to our west of Hudson customers tomorrow that they were able to provide a year ago. So that was a little lengthy, but...
Now, I still have two questions, notwithstanding, and as I said, maybe I think a fuller understanding of both contracts would be helpful, especially the New Jersey Transit one, which seems to be a lot more complex than the Connecticut one has. But you had indicated that the equipment that is being used on the Pascack Valley line is our equipment. Am I missing something? It's our equipment or not our equipment?
On the Pascack Valley line, it's primarily New Jersey Transit equipment.
Okay.
Metro North provides New Jersey Transit 4 Comet 5 coaches.
Right.
And 1 locomotive that's operated within their equipment pool for the Pascack Valley line.
But we own that. We continue to own that.
We own those 4. We
Right.
own the coaches. Yes.
So even though we own it, New Jersey Transit is putting on the PTC equipment, I assume for
Correct.
conformity purposes?
New Jersey Transit is putting on the PTC equipment because, again, that whole west of Hudson service
Right.
is primarily New Jersey Transit operated, and Metro North pays New Jersey Transit to provide service within New York State.
And when is the expiration date of the current agreement?
There is no expiration date per se. It's a self-renewing contract. Rich, can you provide some details?
The contract has expired, and it is renewed unless one of the parties seeks to renegotiate it.
And how long is that renewal for?
It's a yearly renewal.
So therefore, the next decision on whether MTA should renew that would be when?
I can get you that date.
That would be very helpful.
Sure.
Because I think it's something this committee should think very seriously about not renewing in its current form, because obviously we're not getting what we're supposed to get. There may be good reasons. I'm not arguing the reasons, but obviously the service issue is one that leads one to be desired in this context, and it's one that we should look at not doing and not renewing in its current form. I'll just leave it at that. Can I ask one question on trees, which is one of my favorite subjects, as Rich knows? You had indicated that there were 170 trees that somehow ended up on Metro North property that weren't there before the storm. I assume most, if not all of those trees were not on Metro North property to begin with, but came from neighboring properties? I assume.
No, it was a mix, but
okay.
The vast majority were our trees.
Ah, okay. So with regard to our trees, obviously, we can eliminate the trees, which may be a very good thing to finally do. And I'm not just talking about Metro North. I've had the same conversation, obviously, with the Long Island people. Trees are nice until trees are not nice, until, Veronica is caught at Grand Central for 3 hours waiting for the trees to go away. And trees have a way of growing and then moving in that context for artificial means. But I think we need to do something with regard to that. And the question that I always ask is, what rights do we have in regard to trees that could impact our property but are not on our property? And that is something, Rich and I have talked about in regard to, do we have the authority to go out and eliminate them or move them or tell people they can't plant them there or whatever because of the impact it could have on service on both railroads in regard to that period of time?
Yeah, and we always have the ability to trim trees that are coming over on our property. Clearly, in an emergency situation, we'll take whatever actions are necessary. Other than that, it may be a conversation with the landowner. I think part of the issue is with these severe storms, we're seeing healthy trees come down, trees that, pose no danger now are suddenly on the tracks.
And Mitch, as fate would have it, there is a purchase in our book today.
Right.
Metro North had already initiated and was in the midst of a huge tree removal program that they decided to do after the last set of storms. I have to say, the trees that I've seen recently come down are, for the most part, healthy trees. They're not damaged. They're tall, and the wind is
Right.
fierce.
So obviously, Mother Nature is encouraging a yes vote. on
Yes.
That resolution. That was
Yeah.
the purpose of that context. Understand.
Jamie.
I think I'm as guilty as anyone, perhaps, of what I'm about to suggest. I think sometimes happens with regard to West of Hudson service, which is we sometimes treat New Jersey Transit, which has been a challenge for us as long as I've been on this board, as if it's an act of Mother Nature and there's nothing we can do about it. And we sit here and we say, well, we have this tree problem, so we're going to proactively prune. And to Mitch's point, we obviously need to look at these agreements, but that probably needs to start with what do we think we would look to have done differently, almost without regard for the timing of the contract, because it will come up at some point. And what do we really think would make it work better? I think it is fair to say we generally don't accept this level of problem without at least applying great effort and economic resource in other areas of the MTA's business, be it subway or bus or other lines on Long Island Railroad. And we shouldn't be west of Hudson, and we should be really coming up with what would be our ideal plan to improve this situation. I mean, I'm looking at the map. It's a tough geographic line it runs, and it's best when it's running at its best, it's tough. So I'm not sure how to suggest we go formulate our ideal plan, but that would seem to have to be the starting point. Is if we had the magic wand, what would we do? And then we can sort of go from there as to what's realistic.
I think a good way to start is to understand what the existing contract is. It's very much complicated in my mind by the fact that the two lines, Pascack Valley and Port Jervis, are treated differently under the contract. So we have a good idea as to what works and isn't working. And I think we'll leave it to the staff to get prepared for that kind of a briefing. And I would like to do both of the contracts because the comparison is interesting. Yes, Randy, then we need to move on.
Right, very refreshing. I thank Mitch and the rest of my committee here for their support of my constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Justin?
Randy, they're all of our constituents.
Yes, that's a good point to be made. Safety.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The safety report can be found on page 23. The customer accident rate is nearly 21% lower than the previous 12 months. The employee lost time injury rate is down 2% versus the previous 12 months. Our community outreach program TRACS reached 8,500 individuals in March, bringing the total for the year to over 18,000. We will be holding our second annual Safety Excellence Awards on Thursday, May 31st. We will be handing out awards given to individuals, district, and group that have gone above and beyond to ensure the safety of our employees and customers. And finally, on Thursday, June 7th, in partnership with FRA, Operation Lifesaver, and Connecticut DOT, we will be participating in International Level Crossing Awareness Day. We will be distributing safety materials at grade crossings in New York, including west of Hudson, and Connecticut. This concludes the safety report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? You've triggered a question in my mind, which I don't expect an answer for today, but I'd like to know in the future. There has been DOT money set aside for some crossings on the Port Jervis line, and I don't see very much happening. So at some point, could someone brief me on? I know some preliminary work was done, but seems to have ground to a halt. So I'd like to know the status of those.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, Chief, I think you had a busy month.
Good morning. And of course, I'd like to thank the committee for acknowledging the work that the MTA Police Department did this past Tuesday. Of those 170 trees, I have to acknowledge the work that our emergency service unit, which is second to none, did cutting up those trees and getting service back up and running. On the other end of the line at Grand Central, which filled up to close capacity very, very quickly, we were able to redeploy and move resources quickly to create a very visible, calming presence. And Commissioner Vanderpool, I have to correct you, you did more than hang around. You actually shoulder to shoulder with the chairman, the president, and myself during the peak of the issue. This past Friday, the MTA Police Department recognized 122 winners of medals and certificates for outstanding police work and civilian work done on behalf of all of our customers. So once again, I congratulate all of the winners and honorees. Now, from the crime report, for the month of April, total major felonies are up by 2, 19 versus 17, an increase of 12%. Year to date, system-wide, there were 92 crimes versus 82, up by 10. Metro North experienced an increase of 5 major felonies. For the month of for the month of April, that's 13 versus 8. 1 robbery, 2 assaults, 3 burglaries, and 7 grand larcenies. 4 of those 13 are closed by arrest. And for the hate crime report, year to date, there were 7 reported hate crimes versus 12 last year. That's down 5 or 42%. And 1 hate crime recorded in Long Island Railroad. That concludes my report.
Questions? No questions? In that case, we'll move on to the information items. Thank you, Chief.
The first quarter diversity and EEO report for 2018 is in the book, and we are happy to address any questions you may have regarding the report.
This will also be discussed at diversity. No questions?
The PTC status report is included in the agenda, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions? I'd like to point out that we're making progress. I am feeling more and more confident as we go on.
So there have been some reports of Amtrak, at least on the Hudson line, suggesting that they wouldn't run. I don't know if you've seen these reports. I'm sure you've seen these reports. Any general reaction to this? I mean, obviously it's a cause of great consternation in my neck of the woods if they were, in fact, seriously considering skipping the stations, which is at least what some of the reports have said, that if we don't have PTC in time, they would potentially skip, I believe, Poughkeepsie and Rhinecliff specifically, and probably Hudson, I think, perhaps, but that's not us. Have you seen these, and do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll have John answer that question.
Thank you, Sue. With regards to Amtrak, yes, there have been some press and public statements made by them with regards to operating all over the country in areas where PTC might not be fully completed. With regards to the Hudson line from Poughkeepsie south, as you know, we are starting our revenue service demonstration there in the fall, and we're working towards full implementation of PTC there. North of Poughkeepsie, that's basically New York State DOT under contract with Amtrak. Amtrak actually still needs to install the PTC north of Poughkeepsie. With regards to them not running, their general position has been that they will do a risk assessment across the country to determine, based on the operations, whether they continue to operate in areas where that they have no cab signal or ATC, AKA dark territory. The Northeast corridor is a little unique from the rest of the country in that we do have cab signal and ATC. With regards to Metro North in particular, as we've reported over the last several months, we are operating with civil speed enforcement across our territory, both on the Hudson Line, where Amtrak and CSX operate, as well as on the New Haven, which is part of the Northeast corridor. So we do have what I'll call above average protections currently, even in advance of full PTC. But I really can't see under any circumstance how Amtrak would stop operating either on the Northeast corridor or on the Hudson Line.
You're understanding that the Empire service, the entirety of that Empire service, is under contract with New York State DOT? I know you can't speak for Amtrak, but is that your understanding?
That's my understanding, yes. All Amtrak service within the state of New York is under New York State DOT.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? In that case, we'll move on to procurements, please, Al.
Good morning. There are 6 procurements in this month's package totaling $22,157,099. There are 2 non-competitive procurements in the amount of $19,350,000. 1 competitive procurement in the amount of $901,449,000, and 3 ratifications in the amount of $1,905,650. The 2 non-competitive procurement actions are the first being Siemens Industry in the not-to-exceed amount of $3.6 million for the purchase of various original equipment, manufacturer replacement parts for MNR's onboard PTC equipment. The procurement will ensure Metro North has adequate inventory to support the onboard PTC system post-warranty period. Second is a contract modification for original funding in the total not-to-exceed amount of $15,750,000 to an existing non-competitive miscellaneous purchase agreement with Bombardier Transportation for the replacement parts for MNR's various railcar fleets. These funds are necessary due to unplanned material usage that was not accounted for in the original budget request brought to the board. The competitive procurement action is a joint procurement between Metro North and Long Island Railroad to award a contract to Medtrek Incorporated in the not-to-exceed amount of $901,449 to perform compliance audits for the drug and alcohol testing programs of agencies, contractors who fall under Federal Railroad roadway workers requirements. There are 3 ratifications this month. A contract award to Progress Rail Services Corporation in the not-to-exceed amount of $139,000 for the purchase of updated EM 2000 software and hardware for 8 F40 locomotives for Metro North's West of Hudson fleet operated by New Jersey Transit. The current version of software on the F40s locomotives was installed in 2011, and since that time the OEM Progress Rail has made many improvements to the software which reduced train delays in the West of Hudson service. Second ratification is to ORX Railway Corporation in the not-to-exceed amount of $516,650 for an immediate operating need for the purchase of 225 axles for Metro North coach and M3 fleets. This purchase will require immediate delivery to MNR. Presently, the inventory of coach and M3 axles is being depleted, and there is a critical need for delivery within the next few months to keep the fleets in service. The last ratification as was previously discussed, is to Clearway Industries in a not-to-exceed amount of $1.25 million for an immediate operating to provide cutting and removal of trees that were dangerous, downed, or damaged along Metro North's system right-of-way. Over the recent winter months, the Northeast region was affected with adverse weather conditions, which delivered significant in combination of heavy rain, snow accumulations, and strong winds. As a result, a high volume of downed trees, hanging limbs, and debris fell along the right-of-way, requiring immediate corrective action. I request a vote on these items, please.
I move to recommend these items. Is there a second? Thank you. Discussion. Questions, starting with Randy.
Yeah, I see these are the 8 F40s, but there are also 7 GP40s in the fleet. Are those going to be addressed also, or they don't need to have the software put in?
Randy, those have a different control system on board the locomotives, so this particular enhancement does not apply to those remaining 7 locomotives.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Yes, Andrew.
Who's familiar with the Bombardier? I Kathy, I know, sent out a memo to everybody on this. Could you just, though, spend a second, tell me what happened here? And this pricing that we're paying now per unit, how does this compare to what we had negotiated in the original contract?
This, for lack of a better way of describing it, is additional funds that are necessary because myself, my staff dramatically understated the budgetary needs for and the anticipated usage for maintaining the inventory for these. So the unit pricing is exactly the same as it was. This is really just an adjustment because we just understated the total quantity that was to be used over this duration of period of time.
So the pricing per unit is what we negotiated when we bought the cars?
Yes, sir. Well, not when we originally entered the agreement. These cars are old. Yes.
How old are these cars? Roughly.
14 years for Metro
14.
North, a little bit older in Long Island.
Any other questions? Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Monthly reports?
The monthly reports on Metro North's operations, financial, ridership, and capital program are included in the committee agenda book, and we are now available to answer any questions you may have on these reports.
Questions on these reports? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn? Second? Those in favor?